Do you have a horrible relationship with your money? Today I'm going to show you how I've helped numerous clients create happier, healthier relationships with their money so that you can too. My name is Sean. I'm a mental health coach. I see 40 plus clients a week and I help them get results like these. Since starting coaching, I have found a job I am much happier in, joined a band, started performing gigs, am going to be releasing an EP soon, and am feeling less stressed overall. Welcome to Coins to Comfort. This series is 4 parts. Part 1 is basic bitch budgeting. Part 2 is the skill of job hunting. Part 3 is what to do once you're making enough. And Part 4 is building a business. So where I want to start is that so many people that I work with don't even look at their money because they don't want to see it. And it actually makes a whole lot of sense because money is such an important thing in our lives, whether we like it or not. It holds so much power in our lives that when it feels like it's not going well, it's super scary to look at. Like, you don't even want to see it. And so I totally get wanting to avoid it. And what I will say is that just like that cliche, the first step to fixing a problem is admitting that you have one. It's the same thing with your finances, that if we never take the time to look at your finances, then we'll never be able to fix the problem and get you in a better place with your finances. So we're going to start with probably the most basic and also the hardest part of this entire series, which is confronting the numbers. So what I want you to do is I want you to take out a piece of paper or open up a document or an app or whatever works best for you. And I want you to write down how much you make monthly net. Now let me define some terms here. There are 2 terms. There's gross, which is how much you make before taxes. And then there's net, which is how much you make after taxes. We'll get more into detail about these terms later on, but for now, that's good enough. So just write down how much actually goes into your bank account when you get paid each month. Next, I want you to list out all of your necessary expenses. So things like rent, utilities, car payment, things like that. Write all of those down. And then once you have all of those written down, I want you to write all of your discretionary expenses. So all of the things like, a Crunchyroll subscription, a Netflix subscription, Discord Nitro, what the things that you don't necessarily need, you could survive without. Okay, stop for a second. Does this feel super overwhelming? Is this too much? Is it super emotionally taxing? I've seen firsthand how overwhelming this can be for people when they finally start actually looking at their finances. But I've also seen how powerful it is to do this with somebody that can guide you through that fear. One person that I worked with said, Sean is very good at tackling the uncomfortable and scary things at my own pace. It's not as frightening to look at finances when you have someone who knows better walking you through it and holding you accountable. So I'm not sharing this to brag. I'm actually sharing this because I want to invite you to a free, no pressure call where we just sit down and we work through some of this stuff. And one person that I worked with felt empowered enough to go and do everything on their own after that. And it was fantastic. So if that sounds like it would be helpful for you, I'll leave a link down in the description where you can just schedule a free call with me. Okay, getting back into it, the next thing that I want you to write down is your credit card payments, any credit card payments that you may have. Once you have your monthly net income, your necessary expenses, your discretionary expenses, and any credit or debt payments that you have, now what you want to do is you want to take your net monthly income and you want to subtract out all of that stuff that you just wrote down. And whatever is left over, so if there is something left over, congratulations, you are making enough money. You're in a good spot. If the number is negative, that is okay. It is actually way more common than you think. A lot of people function on a negative budget, and a lot of people are really, really stressed about money, and so it makes sense. We are constantly told that we're supposed to be responsible and we're supposed to, have our shit together. There's all this pressure. And so it makes perfect sense that a lot of shame or fear or, some cocktail of emotions would come up around this. The good news is that the solution is simple. Now, let me put a caveat on that. It is not easy, but it is simple. The solution is that you can either spend less, you can make more, or you can do some combination of both. I will also include in the description a little link to sort of a sample, what a sample budget might look like based on what I've described. Okay, so before we dive into spending less or making more, I do want to take a second to set some expectations. which is that fixing your finances is not a silver bullet of a process. It is actually kind of a long, drawn out process, and like it's not fun. Like once you do it, my clients that go through this process feel incredibly empowered at the end. But it is a hard process to go through. And so I just want you to know that it's going to take time, and there will probably be a lot of emotional stuff that comes up throughout it. So the first step in starting to fix this situation, if you have a negative budget, is that there's an expression that I love, which is what gets tracked improves. And so it is really, really important that we start to track your finances. So there are two apps, or I guess two methods that I personally would recommend. The first one is called Bird, and Bird is an app that you can get on your phone. They have a web app as well, but I prefer the mobile version. And I'll leave a link down in the description for that. I'm not sponsored, I swear. It's just, I just like the app. And you can track your finances there. The other resource is called a conscious spending plan, which is something that was developed by Ramit Sethi, who wrote I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is a book that I highly recommend. I'll leave the link both to the conscious spending plan and to the book in the description. And if there is another option that you prefer that works for you, go for it. I don't have any attachment to what you use. All that I care is that you track. And I think that what is really important is that a lot of these finance apps have a whole lot of complication to them. They really convolute the whole money process. What I would really encourage as you're going through this process is whatever app you choose, just make sure that there is a very clear indication of how much money you actually have left. Because once you start making enough money, what will happen is that you will enter in how much you make in a month, you will subtract out all of your expenses, and down at the bottom, there will be a number, and that number is your guilt-free spending. That number is, I can do anything I want with this, and I don't have to feel bad about it at all because I've already accounted for everything that I need to spend money on. Which, let me tell you, when I work with clients, this is such a huge, fundamental shift in how they operate with their money. Money has always been something that is so filled with guilt for them. And to be able to just freely spend money without having to worry about it is just a whole paradigm shift. It's incredible to see. Okay, so now that we've got you situated with some sort of budgeting app or spreadsheet or whatever, now we want to look at the spend less solution. So I am not somebody who is going to tell you, you need to pinch every penny. You need to cut costs mercilessly. Never buy anything out ever again. I think that that's stupid and unrealistic and also unsustainable. The analogy that comes to mind is like a fad diet. It's like, eat nothing but fruit skins. Actually, you can't even eat them. You can only lick fruit skins and you will lose weight. It's like, yeah, sure, you'll lose weight because you're starving yourself, but then you'll gain all the way back as soon as you come off the diet. So similarly, with your money, we want to find something that is sustainable. And what I find is typically sustainable for people that I work with is when they prioritize spending on the things that they really love and cut mercilessly on the things that they don't care about. So for instance, for me, I love spoiling my wife, so I spend very freely on that. Whereas food for me is just kind of fuel for the most part. And so I buy the healthy, affordable options because it doesn't make a difference to me whether it's fancy or whatever. I don't need fancy food. I'm happy to just fuel my body. And a great place to start in this process of spending less is just looking through your subscriptions. We all have those subscriptions that have been going on for years and we have never used them once. And those are a great place to start cutting costs. And I've even heard some clients say things like, well, I've tried canceling, but then they just keep charging me. If that's the case, what you can do is you can actually call your bank, or sometimes you can even do it on your banking app or online, and you can just dispute the charge and say, don't let this person charge me anymore. And the bank will not let that charge go through. So you always get to be in control of your finances. Now, the other sort of fix to this problem of not making enough money, other than spending less, is making more. So making more is a lot more complicated, but we'll start with the basics. So a lot of times when I work with clients, just a simple, look around on a job hunting site like Indeed or LinkedIn or something will yield a whole lot of possibility. that they just didn't know was out there. So it's worth just taking a look to see what is out there and what kind of pay is out there, to see if you could just get a raise by switching jobs. You could also ask for a raise at your work, which I can walk you through the process of what that looks like. So if you want to ask for a raise at your work, I know it feels super scary, but it can actually be a very friendly conversation. So you can set up a meeting with your boss. So you send an email or whatever and just ask for a meeting. And then in the meeting, you sit down and you start by asking them, hey, boss, at this job, what is it that makes a top performer? And don't let them give you middle management talk. A lot of middle managers will say a whole lot of words without actually saying anything. They'll say, well, just keep your head down, and we really value hard workers and team players, so just be sure that you're doing that, and you're doing a great job, so just keep up the hard work. Don't let them get away with that crap. Instead, you want to get objective metrics. You want to get things that you can sort of hold their feet to the fire on. So I don't know, if you're working at a tech, like an IT job, then it's like, okay, how many tickets does a top performer close? Things like that. So get those kinds of metrics from your boss, hold their feet to the fire. And then once you get those, say, okay, over the next 6 months or so, I would like to knock these things out. I would like to do all of these things that you just listed. If I do that over the next 6 months, could we talk about a compensation readjustment at the end? Could we talk about a raise at the end? And most of the time, your manager will say, yeah, absolutely. Because you're not even asking for a raise in that moment. All that you're asking for is to have a conversation about a raise once you prove that you're a top performer, which your middle manager wants because it makes them look good. So then what you do is, once you finish that conversation, then you leave and you send them an email right after, and you just say, hey, just following up, here's what we talked about in the meeting. I'm going to be working on XYZ. If I'm able to do all of these things, we talked about the idea of talking about a compensation readjustment in about 6 months. And so then throughout those 6 months, you send them updates. You say, hey, boss, I've reached this goal that we talked about, so that they can see your progress throughout the course of things. And then at the end of the 6 months, you schedule another meeting with them and you sit down and you say, okay, here are, all of the expectations that I have met. And, oh, look, I even exceeded this one. How nifty. And we talked about, if I had met all of these, we could talk about a compensation readjustment. And in that meeting, you also want to have your research done. So they're probably going to ask you for some sort of number. And when they ask you for a number, you want to be prepared. So a really easy way to do this is to say, well, I did some research on my field, and it looks like for somebody in my position, typically the higher range of salary is about whatever, 70K. And because I am now a top performer according to these metrics, I would like to ask for the higher end of that. And then what will probably happen is that they will negotiate you down a little bit, because that's their job and that's okay. And ultimately you have to work with them. So it's actually totally fine if they negotiate you down a little bit, but you still just negotiated yourself a raise. Now, like I said, the other option is just looking on a site like Indeed or LinkedIn for an entirely new job, and you can just switch jobs. And some people find that easier. If you decide to go the looking at other jobs route, really, really important note is, do not just look at jobs in your local area. It's the 21st century, baby. We don't have to just look at jobs in our local area. We can look at jobs all over the world because we can work remote. So when you are looking at a site like Indeed, be sure that they are not filtering your results only to your local area, because you can get paid a whole lot more working in a place like California than you can working in a place like Kentucky. And by looking for a remote job in California, if you live in Kentucky, you can end up making a whole lot more money. So be sure to look around for remote jobs. The other thing that is a really important note is, when you are looking at jobs and you see a job that feels like a really great fit, but then you're like, oh no, I can't do it because the job requirements, ignore that completely. Trust me, I was trained by a former Amazon VP turned career coach, and he had hired hundreds of people. And he himself told me, the job requirements are crap. They are literally there to deter people from applying for jobs so that HR doesn't have so many applications to go through. So if you see a job that feels like a really good match for you, but you don't feel like you perfectly fit the job requirements, apply anyway. The sad truth is that in job hunting, the job does not go to the most qualified candidate. The job goes to the most skilled job hunter, because job hunting itself is a skill, which is actually the next thing that we are going to talk about. My goal is to help you, the person watching this. So there's a link down below where you can let me know what it is that you in particular are struggling with so that I can better address that. And if you want to do a quick check-in on your mental health, there's a free 2-minute quiz where I just give you some quick insights into areas that you might want to focus on. I'll leave a link down in the description to take the quiz. And if you're really into this career stuff and want to hear more about it, this video right here or down in the description, depending on where you're watching this, goes into detail about how Hearthstone helped me build a successful career. So check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!